Thank you guys for joining us on our panels, Comic-Con 2020. My name is Chris Ferder. I'm the CEO of Halon Entertainment. Halon is a visualization company, and we specialize in storytelling. Specifically, we use technology to enable creatives to tell better stories. We've been in business for 17 years now and have worked on probably, I'm not sure the number, 200 plus feature films. With us today, we have a number of very talented people that I'd like to introduce, starting with Dan Gregoire. Dan is the founder and chairman of the board.
Thanks for everybody joining here. As Chris said, I founded Halon Entertainment about 17 years ago. I'm currently chairman of the board and majority owner. And right now I'm working on several projects involving virtual production, including the use of cloud assets and services, specifically as a methodology to get people back to work.
Thank you very much. Kristen, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Kristen Turnipseed. I am a visualization supervisor here at Halon. I've been here for about 5 years now. I've worked on a number of projects, most recently in Ford, Ferrari, and at ASTRA.
Excellent. Ford, Ferrari. It's my poster right here. One of my favorite movies from last year. And we have Kenny. Kenny, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. I'm Kenny DiGiordano. I've been with the company going on almost 10 years now. Been in the supervisor position for the last 3.5 or so. Taking on projects such as the bad supervisor for Mandalorian and just lots of various supervisor projects in the previous world as well.
Thanks, Kenny. We have Ryan McCoy with us.
I'm the senior supervisor. I've done a lot of pre-viz, post-viz work, as well as doing video game cinematics and theme park rides.
Ryan, you've been with us for, what, 15 years now?
Yeah.
Wow. Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. And we have Keith. Keith joining us from the UK.
Hello there. My name's Keith Fallon. I'm a supervisor with Halon UK, and I've worked recently on Suicide Squad and previz on The Batman.
I'm glad that we're still at least able to come together and do these panels and share our experiences with the Comic-Con audience. And it's an interesting time, I think. The topic that we're going to speak on today is very relevant. It's how do we get back to work in a post-COVID era, in a time when we're not allowed to be in the same location at the same time. What are some of the tools that we can use as filmmakers to get back to work? So Kristen, we did a project last year with Wes Ball that was pretty interesting. It was probably one of the first where the director was actively working on the project from his home for a good portion of the development cycle.
Yeah, we were working on Mouse Guard, and as is well known, Wes Ball is very adept at working in Unreal Engine himself. This provided us with a lot of opportunity to use these tools in a way that is more common now, but we were able to use these tools as a larger portion of our visualization than we had previously, in that many of our reviews with assets and environments were done right in Engine instead of waiting until final renders. Wes would go home and work within these levels, make some lighting adjustments, make some material adjustments and environmental adjustments, and was able to share those changes back with us. To that, we ended up having to build an entire suite of tools to be able to accommodate some of these adjustments, bring these back down into, if it's animation, bring it back down into Maya so that we can work with it. But we worked really, really closely with both Wes and the other teams on site there to bring Wes's tools and adjustments that he was making in his own time and incorporate those back into the previs. And it was really quite streamlined because it was all done right there in Unreal while he's, at home or was out sick for a couple of weeks, but was still able to do reviews live in Unreal and make these updates and changes in real time. And as I said, we were able to fold all those right back in and utilize those right away. It was a pretty cool project to work on, and it's a shame it didn't go as far as it could have, but it was a lot of fun working with that. And I I feel like a lot of our tool sets really made quite a few advancements during that time as well. The difference between how video games are made and how movies are made, I think those lines are getting quite blurred. Obviously, Unreal Engine was built as a game engine. We've worked alongside Epic to utilize it in a very cinematic way, and in addition to, on our video game projects. But I think a lot of those workflows, the lines between them are becoming a bit more blurred. And I think that's to the benefit not only of film to kind of adopt some of the efficiencies that video games have inside them, but also for video games to kind of bring in a lot more of these, cinematic elements and incorporate them into the games as well.
It's interesting because we're talking about a lot, specifically right now, we're talking about virtual cameras, real-time motion capture, and a lot of those tools are used in the planning phase. But one of the interesting things that I've been fascinated with virtual production is that these tools also span all phases of production. So we start the use of these in pre-production, but it can go all the way to in-camera composites, which is what Kenny was working on Mandalorian. Kenny, what was your role on that project, and how did that work? Because that's probably the most prominent example right now of the use of virtual production to get in-camera finals.
Yeah, that was actually probably one of the most unique experiences of my life. Just being able to get in there and do that. I was the VAD supervisor, so in there we were basically an extension of the art department, and we got to work very closely with the set decorators, with the production designers, the art directors, and everybody who's actually in there, like making everything look correct, like physically on set. But what we had to do was to extend that and make it much more believable on a screen that's just behind those actors. I mean, I remember there was a day where I walked on set and I got the chance to see one of our environments for the room where Werner Herzog is sitting in the room. And I saw these stormtroopers sitting up against this wall, like on some boxes, and like you couldn't tell like if it was actually in the room or whether it wasn't in the room. I don't know. It just makes you realize that it's just something that's totally possible, and it's something that's going to be used a lot more, in the future. So I'm really excited to see where it goes, especially from where we started, with virtual production, probably more VCam situations where we're just, tracking a camera in the volume and making everything, feel realistic with a real camera. Whereas now you actually get that on set and on location. There's some behind the scenes footage, to where they're saying just being able to shoot a 12-hour sunrise or a 12-hour, sunset, those types of things, those opportunities are endless just to be able to get those key shots. So it's very cool and exciting.
What you're talking about is a pretty controlled environment, right? So on Mandalorian, it was, a huge 180-degree LED screen that was probably 30 feet high with a roof on it. You have complete control of the environment in that situation.
Yeah, and those were the types of situations to where we really had to think about also how we can get the most out of our setup, I guess you could say, to where, say there's 3 or 4 different setups on the day. You don't want to have, set deck running in there and like switching things around for every single shot. But it allows us to, at least say, get, 10 to 15 shots all in one set. And then you rotate the set just, 20 degrees or whatever. They got to reposition some other stuff. But then you can get another, 15, 20 shots out of that.
How were those assets being created?
That was also a lot of the fun part, because we got a chance to dive into something else that Dan has been trying to push on us for years, and that's the photogrammetry process. Yes, Dan, I'm calling you out.
You almost made me spit my coffee, Kenny.
Well, but it's something that it's very valuable to us, and especially like, the things that we're trying to do with the virtual production aspect of things, that, we can go to a set and we can, fully, take pictures of everything, take, a couple thousand pictures and then turn around and rebuild that in, a software package, and then turn around and kick that into Unreal, is just a great thing to do for like sets. But for an actual asset itself, I mean, you can turn around and you can bring that into one little light box room, and you can, take, photos 360 degrees around, turn around and like rebuild that in the photogrammetry process. And now you have the same exact box, or whatever that's on set in the Mandalorian room, to where it's the same exact thing that appears on screen.
Kristen, you did some work earlier this year on utilizing previs assets on these LED stages as well. Can you walk us through how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is definitely a workflow that's going to be hopefully pretty prominent moving forward. But what's nice is that with our VAD team, we're able to just go ahead and, I mean, in a normal previs process, we build sets and environments, characters, and assets, and no one asset needs to get, left behind from stage to stage throughout production. So, art department creates an asset, we get it, we will rig it or we modify it to kind of work for us. We're able to use that and take that to the LED stage and use that as a backdrop. We can use this for lighting, we can use it for staging, you can use it to frame up your cameras, but at the same time, while we're using this on stage as kind of the backdrop, the camera is able to capture a green screen frustum. So you're able to use those LED screens and all of the previs assets as your lighting and your staging and reference for your actors. However, the final pixels that's being captured in camera is actually a green screen that can then be replaced with your final pixels at the end. All while your production is being shot, your final VFX vendor is able to be working on making your finals versions of these assets. So because it's gone through a rigorous vetting phase through pre-production from art department through previs and then up to the wall, your creatives have a chance to really take a look at it, move things around on the set. They're moving around our previs assets. That way, when these assets do go to the final VFX vendor, they're at such a point that that really the VFX vendor is working on details, they're working on fine tuning, and it really brings down your iterations in post by bringing all of that through the previs process and using the assets on the wall from the previs process. It also saves, a lot of the work that the final VFX vendor has to do. Instead of starting from scratch on every single asset, they're able to take the assets that we build in Unreal. We're able to hand them first to the wall and then to the VFX vendor, so they kind of have a launching point to begin from, which has shown some pretty great efficiencies just across all aspects of production, from all the way from art department to the set on-set department. As far as iterating your environments and your characters, it's become pretty powerful, and it's a really exciting thing to be involved with. In a post-COVID, and a lot of that can be done remotely, but to visualization in general, I think a lot of that speaks to the usefulness and how many different aspects of production just visualization alone can touch. It's not just making shots and it's not just building assets, but from what we build and make, because we're working with real-time lighting, we can change your environmental situations, but from the scenes that we build, we're also able to extrapolate set construction. On Ad Astra, we did a fair amount of that, where we gave our specs over to art department and they were able to build to our specs because that's what looked great in camera. And it just affects so many different aspects of production and answers questions for so many different aspects, not just creatives, not just directors, and not just a blueprint for how to create shots, but it can also inform so much along the way and answer all those questions, hopefully before you get to post-production and then need to fix it later. So I think, Keith, as you were saying, just if everybody is kind of looking for the same information from visualization source, like it's just such a multi-tool that productions can leverage.
Yeah, sometimes some of the departments aren't always in sync with each other, and it's hard to get communication between them because you may want something or to know something, but that may be affected by another department, when really you can just pull them together in really quickly in one room, or post-COVID possibly just share screen.
Going back to location scouting, that's one of the obvious targets for innovation, because I feel like we're not going to be in a situation anytime real soon where a large group of people are going to get into a bus, or they're going to get onto a plane. They're going to fly to locations. They're going to tour locations. And I know that that's one of the things that I get contacted about quite a bit. Ryan and Dan, you guys were working on a project not that long ago where you were actually doing location scouting via Google Earth.
Yeah, we've been doing that in a number of projects. I mean, we've been doing it for a while, actually, so for almost a decade, you know, of just ripping stuff from Google Earth. And often for larger scale things, you know, if you're going to frame up on a mountain or, you know, a landscape, you can get that detail. Now with Google, it's getting better and better. So we're able to recreate things even more accurate so that your lensing can still be somewhat correct. But yeah, recently we've been implementing more and more photogrammetry into that process so we can get down more to a street level or to a, you know, more of a, you know, smaller rocks, smaller trees within whatever that scouted environment is that you wanted to recreate. And using drones, using even just crowdsourcing photographs that exist. But usually it's better if you actually, if you have more control over that scenario. But it also depends on the quality you're going for, because we could go for a previs quality where it's a scout and it's just the initial feeling of how this is going to be taken in, how you're going to experience it as an actor, as a cameraman, you know, where should we even stage these things? And then we can take it a step further and actually film this stuff with the quality and fidelity to bring it higher than that into a more final realm.
And I'll take it back even farther. I mean, I used Keyhole, which is the product that was developed that actually was bought by Google and turned into Google Earth. It was called Keyhole. We were using that on the end of Star Wars Episode 3, and we used it for location scouting for War of the Worlds in 04-05. So, you know, this actually dovetails into a point I was thinking about, which is sort of like all the little steps that these ideas and these technologies take to get to where we are now. Because I think some people, you know, it's like, oh, they've got all these amazing new tools that came out of nowhere. Well, no, not really. I mean, some of them are a little immaculate, but for the most part, they're all evolutions of things, right? So from, you know, we were talking about virtual location scouting. So, you know, some of my first experience with that was sitting with Spielberg and Lucas as they were charting a path through Mustafar for the Kenobi Anakin fight. So, and they, you know, basically I taught Steven how to use Maya so he could navigate in Maya and explore that world and become inspired by the things that the art department had designed. And then the next evolution of that is walking Andrew Stanton through all of his big Zidanga sets, the Princess's Palace and all that kind of stuff, so that he could get, so that art department could get approval to actually start moving that forward into visual effects. And he used a virtual camera, you know, just walking around a window into the virtual world to do this. And then, of course, the next evolution of that is using tools like Microsoft Photosynth, which was like just an R&D project that they threw online to upload a bunch of photos from the canyon, the third act canyon in Cowboys and Aliens, to figure out the shape of that canyon, because there was just no other way to capture it at the time. And then, of course, that leads into, you know, match moving from ILM using photogrammetry to do the ants in Indy 4, and then consumer off-the-shelf tools that eventually allow us to basically almost do it on our cell phones. So these are, you know, these things are 15, 20 years in the making, and there's all these little steps that introduce it, you know, that sort of percolate, that introduce it, that create sort of a niche kind of you know, small accomplishment within the context of a bigger project, then all of a sudden sort of medium and then mass adoption. And you know, like the stuff we're doing right now that we can't really talk about, we'll talk about next year, and it'll feel new and fresh, but we'll be like, you know, we've been doing that for 10 years already. So then I think everybody here has sort of sensed and felt that. But that's, I only really say this for the audience because you know, you can get these things on your cell phone. You can get these on your desktop at home, on your laptop, and you can pluck away at it and chip away at these big ideas by using consumer off-the-shelf pieces and accomplish quite a bit for yourselves at this moment in time.
But Kristen and Keith, you guys were recently working on a film that was utilizing virtual camera in a production capacity?
Yeah, there was a situation whereby they wanted to figure out on set how things were going to look. Some controllers were printed out, put around an iPad so that the director could walk onto set, hold up the iPad, look through it, and see exactly what was going to be there. Everything's changing, nothing's standing still, so what you come up with this week, somebody's in some other company, somewhere else, is trying something bigger and better. So it's exciting to know that it doesn't stop.
With that same project that Keith is referring to, we were able to still also, bring in stunt actors and show the director like the action that he's seeing with the stunt actors on stage, filtered through Unreal and visualized as the characters that they would be in the location that they would be. So we can not only for us and for expediting our process, we were able to say, hey, if you maybe take another step to the right a little bit, then you're standing on this, piece of set that we need you to be on. And so we can get much cleaner capture results that already kind of fits within the scale of our environment. But we're also able to show the director, live, you're looking at this actor and this is them as this character. So you're seeing your characters kind of battle it out right there, or do, whatever it is you need them to do right in front of you. And again, as Keith was saying, though, everything's moving forward so quickly that the technology is just constantly changing and constantly getting plussed, which is a really exciting thing, because I feel like we at Halon had our hands in this pre-COVID. And so now that this types of technology are becoming necessity, we've got experience with it, and we've got, we've played around with it, and now we're able to take that and apply it in a more practical sense, since we've had our fun with it, and now we can take that and apply it post-COVID.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even the luxury that we had before, which was being able to put a headset on like an Oculus or a Vive and being able to walk around that virtual set that the art department had created for a director, and then being able to see either how the action is working or figure out, even if it was either just used for scouting or used for actually finding the shots. That before was a fun, neat tool that we were starting to design and get more familiarity with, but now it becomes more of a necessity. And now we can, ship them an Oculus and have them throw it on in their living room and just walk around and figure out what that is. And not only client facing, but these tools really help us when we're supervising, and even just for an artist being able to figure out what that is, not being able to actually be on set or, be in the other room and play with action figures, as we used to rely on.
Good point, Ryan. I mean, you guys all know, we went to a fully remote workforce on March 13th. And I think that it went pretty smooth for us, but one of the things that came out of that really quick is we needed to redefine our production processes and how we were tracking artist tasks, how we were tracking shows, and that there was a little bit of a learning curve there. I imagine as well that the number of people needed on a set, if we're talking about a virtual production set, an LED stage, the amount of people necessary on set decreases. Would you guys say that's accurate?
The number of jobs, whenever these things happen, there's always a fear that the number of jobs or my job in particular is going to go away, but in reality, it'll probably actually increase, but for sure it'll evolve. Like for example, location scouting. In the past, 20 people would jump on an airplane and then into buses and vans or trucks, and you'd go out to a location, you'd walk around for 10 minutes, you'd go yeah or no, and then you'd go back. Now you basically send, you have your location scout goes out, with maybe a drone or a camera, and essentially hoses that whole thing down with photography, brings it back, we build it as a 3D model, and now you're doing a location scout via remote VR headset from your living room. So the jobs are still there, they're just evolving and changing, and or from a COVID perspective, they're simply being offset in the chain of events. rather than everybody going to location, the location comes to you. And then it goes onto the screen, and then the greens people come in, and they dress out the dirt and the bushes or whatever needs to happen, and then they leave, and everybody else comes in. So as part of the sort of the concentric circles, the armbands, the staggering of the world that they're talking about in terms of a post-COVID production workflow environment, and I think that's why some of these tools actually can service that.
And even if it does become simpler, that just means all the more productions you can do. The main thing that I've noticed is just the organization has to be so much better than it was before. Like often, it may have even been a false sense of organization with having your whole team actually physically there. You just assume they're all working on the things that you want them to be working on. And now that you pull the rug under that, you actually really have to make sure things are accountable and that there's ways of quickly checking in that in some cases are more effective than they were before.
That was one of the things that immediately right out of the gate we had to take a hard look at, and that was how were our coordinators interfacing with the teams, how robust was our tracking on shots, what were the tools that we were using to track, how do we all get on the same page. In your opinion, what's been the most valuable change that's come out of that from a coordinator standpoint?
I know there was one time that I had to be off-site and go remote. This was just before COVID. And what I did was I just left the camera running on the computer. I was still working at the machine, but I was always on in the studio. So if anybody came to my desk, they'd just sit down and I'd be, there. So I'm thinking maybe half dozen secondhand cell phones just stuck across the top of my monitor, just linked into everybody, just live. I think that's the way to go.
I mean, we're still social animals, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So being able to hear each other's voices, being able to hear how things are going, the intonation, just feel some connection back with society, because a lot of us spend a lot of time working, and being able to feel like you're not isolated is, I think, really the way to go.
And let's face it, storytelling is communal, it's social. It requires an audience. It requires, going back to the campfire, you could sit there by yourself telling a story, but if there's no one there to hear it, is there a point in talking to yourself? Maybe, maybe not. But that goes for filmmaking, modern filmmaking. It's a communal group exercise where immaculate inspiration strikes in the moment because of something someone else might have done 2 feet from you, or what an actor is doing, or a lighting change that all of a sudden captures the moment, even though it wasn't meant to. And so I think we're going to struggle for a little while to maintain that kind of spontaneity until we can really truly immerse ourselves in Tim Sweeney's metaverse, some version of Fortnite that looks more realistic and is built out specifically for every film project that you collaborate on or something, and a persistent open environment that is literally like an MMO, massively multiplayer online game for the 2,000 people that work on a film, that's just always there. It always has the stuff that collects and collates and organizes the material and the thoughts and the notes and the little one-offs in a way that we can digest it in a natural, real world format. And I think that's coming somewhere.
That's exciting and scary at the same time.
Yeah, very scary. I was just going to say that I think it'll be nice for the coordinators too to, coordinate, like Dan was just saying, some kind of a communal room to where we can all get together and still talk about story. Because I feel like since the remote workforce is, kind of segregated from everybody else, and sometimes maybe some people feel more alone than others, maybe you're not speaking up as much as you would in in an office environment, or you're not sitting next to somebody to where you hear them speaking about something and you're like, I know the answer to that, and it could really help that communication breakdown.
We're talking about a lot of very highly technical tools to allow people to collaborate on shot design or direction, but what are some of the tools we can use to just bring people together? Because there is something missing when we're all separate, like you guys so eloquently put, it's not the same to connect over Zoom. There is a sense of community that gets lost. There are bonds that get built on set that, I think, I'm not sure that we build those bonds when we're all separate, collaborating in a virtual space. And I'm not saying that we don't, but I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. It's just takes a little bit more diligence to actually, have those water cooler conversations with everyone else that you would naturally have in the office.
Yeah, I think on one of the recent shows we had done a Google Meet. We pulled together into a break room and shoot the breeze there. Yeah, you miss those buttering toast moments. So if we can get those back, that would be great.
It's because they all happen off camera. If only we could have the camera follow us into the kitchen. I think it'd be more exciting.
We should all get head cams that you have to wear.
Yeah. Body cams.
Yeah.
Very 1984. Here.
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
Yeah, I feel like even to speak to Dan's point too, if anything, it even opens up a lot more tech jobs because, on big sets, you're going to get like a brain bar. You're going to have multiple people running, several different machines to make this thing happen. From my experience on Mandalorian, it's not just one person sitting behind a computer hitting a button to change an environment. I mean, it still takes a team of people to do that kind of thing. If anything, it should encourage more and more people to get involved in this stuff and, hopefully make it better and much more accessible. I mean, Unreal gives this thing to the world for free at this point. So, we should definitely be taking advantage of that. And everybody out there should be learning it, whether, you're traditionally, working in like, Maya V-Ray or, Max V-Ray renders and all that stuff. There's a big future here for it.
Yeah, but if you learn it really well, then you should give us a call.
Yes.
That's right. Well, we're just about out of time. So I just wanted to thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to come and record this. And for anybody who's watching this, if you want to see examples of what we're talking about, videos, you can go to halon.com. And we have a lot of examples up there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody.